"I've been waiting 3 months to tell you this," Hailey Ramirez whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for mine in the dim light of her childhood bedroom. "Every time you smiled at me downstairs, every time you helped with dinner, every time you made my little sister laugh, I fell a little harder." The note I'd found slicked under my textbook that morning suddenly made perfect sense. "Meet me upstairs." It wasn't about homework help or borrowing something. It was about this moment. This confession that would change everything between us. But let me back up and tell you how we got here. Because this story starts 3 months earlier when I first walked into that house as Chloe Bennett's new roommate, completely unaware that her older sister would turn my world upside down. I remember standing on the front porch of the Bennett family home, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, wondering if I'd made the right choice. College housing had fallen through at the last minute, and Chloe had offered me her family's spare room for the semester. "My parents travel for work constantly," she'd explained over coffee. "It's just me and my older sister, Hailey, most of the time. She's cool. You'll like her." What Chloe hadn't mentioned was that Hailey was absolutely stunning, with dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets and a smile that could light up a room. When she answered the door that first day, I nearly forgot how to speak. "You must be Chloe's new roommate," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Hailey. Welcome to our chaos." The way she said "or" made something flutter in my chest, though I quickly pushed the feeling aside. She was my roommate's sister after all. Off limits. Completely, totally off limits. The first few weeks passed in a blur of settling into routines. I'd wake up early for my 8 a.m. classes, stumble to the kitchen for coffee, and usually find Hailey already there, dressed for her job at the local marketing firm. She'd smile and ask about my classes, genuinely interested in my psychology major. "That's fascinating," she'd say when I'd ramble about developmental theories or research methods. "You really light up when you talk about it." Those morning conversations became the highlight of my day. Though I tried to convince myself it was just friendly roommate dynamics. Chloe would often join us, creating a comfortable trio around the breakfast table. But I found myself looking forward to the mornings when Chloe slept in, when it was just Hailey and me sharing coffee and conversation in the quiet kitchen. She had this way of listening that made me feel heard, really heard, in a way I'd never experienced before. Her questions were thoughtful, her responses genuine. When I mentioned struggling with a particularly difficult professor, she offered study tips from her own college days. When I worried about my thesis proposal, she helped me organize my thoughts over late-night kitchen table sessions. I remember one evening vividly. We'd been poring over my notes, the kitchen lit only by the soft glow of the overhead light. Hailey leaned in close, pointing out a flaw in my argument with such precision that I was impressed. "You're smarter than you give yourself credit for," she said, her voice warm and encouraging. It was during one of those late-night conversations that I first noticed something shifting between us. Chloe had gone to bed early, claiming exhaustion from midterms, leaving Hailey and me alone with our textbooks and mugs of tea. "You know," Hailey said, looking up from her laptop where she'd been working on a client presentation, "I never expected Chloe's roommate to become such good company." There was something in her tone, something softer than usual that made my heart skip. "I could say the same about my roommate's sister," I replied, trying to keep my voice light despite the sudden tension in the air. She smiled, but it was different from her usual bright grin. This smile was quieter, more intimate somehow. "I'm glad you're here," she said simply, and the weight of those words settled between us like a secret. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that I was reading too much into the moment. Hailey was just being kind, welcoming. She probably said things like that to everyone. But the way she'd looked at me, the way her voice had dropped to almost a whisper, it felt like something more. I replayed the conversation in my head, analyzing every word, every glance, until exhaustion finally pulled me under. The signs became harder to ignore after that night. Hailey started finding excuses to spend time with me when Chloe wasn't around. She'd offer to help with my research, claiming she was curious about psychology. She'd suggest we watch movies together when Chloe went out with friends, always choosing the couch seat closest to mine. During family dinners when her parents were home, I caught her stealing glances across the table, her cheeks flushing pink when our eyes met. The touches started small and seemingly innocent. A hand on my shoulder when she'd read over my essay drafts. Fingers brushing mine when we'd both reach for the salt. A gentle touch on my arm when she'd laugh at my jokes. Each contact sent electricity through my system, but I kept telling myself I was imagining the lingering nature of these moments. One afternoon, while we were in the living room sorting through old family photos that Chloe had pulled out for a project. Hailey's hand rested on my back a fraction longer than necessary as she pointed out a childhood picture of herself. "See, even back then I was the serious one," she joked. But her eyes held mine with an intensity that made my pulse race. Then came the day she offered to drive me to campus when my car wouldn't start. The ride was filled with comfortable conversation about her work, my classes, our shared love of obscure indie films. But when we arrived at the psychology building, instead of saying goodbye, she turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You know, I never really understood what Chloe saw in psychology until I started talking with you about it," she said. "You make everything sound so alive." The way she said it, the way she was looking at me, made my breath catch. "Maybe I could audit one of your classes sometime if that's not weird." I assured her it wouldn't be weird at all, though my racing heart suggested otherwise. As I got out of the car, I felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Like we were teetering on the edge of something unspoken. That weekend, Chloe announced she'd be visiting her boyfriend at his college for the entire weekend, leaving Hailey and me alone in the house for the first time. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I found myself changing clothes 3 times Friday evening, unsure why I cared so much about how I looked for a casual night at home. Hailey had suggested we order pizza and have a movie marathon, something we'd done before with Chloe present. But without my roommate's buffer, everything felt charged with possibility. We settled on the couch with our pizza, Hailey having chosen a romantic comedy I'd mentioned wanting to see weeks earlier. The film played on, but I was hyper-aware of her presence next to me. The way her leg occasionally brushed against mine, the scent of her shampoo, the soft sound of her laughter at the funny parts. Halfway through the film, during a particularly cheesy romantic scene, Hailey turned to me and said, "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to just take a chance on something that scares you?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. "All the time," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to my lips for just a moment before returning to my eyes. "Me too," she said. In that instant, the room felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken desires. I wanted to lean in, to bridge the gap, but fear held me back. What if I was wrong? The movie continued playing, but neither of us was watching anymore. We were caught in this moment of almost. This precipice of possibility that neither of us seemed brave enough to cross. When the credits rolled, Hailey stretched and announced she was heading to bed. But not before placing her hand over mine for just a moment longer than necessary. "Sweet dreams," she said, her voice soft with something that sounded like longing. I sat there for a while after she left, my mind racing. Had I missed my chance? Or was this just the beginning of something building slowly? Sunday evening brought Chloe back. Full of stories about her weekend and completely oblivious to the tension that had been building in her absence. Life returned to its normal rhythm, but everything felt different now. The looks Hailey and I shared across the dinner table carried new weight. Our morning coffee conversations took on layers of subtext. I found myself analyzing every interaction, every smile, every casual touch, trying to determine if I was reading the situation correctly or if my feelings were coloring my perception. The uncertainty was driving me crazy. But I couldn't bring myself to make the first move. Hailey was older, more experienced, and sophisticated in ways that made me feel young and uncertain. What if I was misreading everything? What if my feelings weren't reciprocated and I ended up making things awkward for everyone? The risk felt enormous, especially since I still had months left living in their house. I confided a bit in a friend over lunch one day, but even then, I kept the details vague, not wanting to jinx whatever this was, or wasn't. But the tension continued to build with each passing day. Hailey started leaving little notes in my textbooks. Initially, just encouraging messages about upcoming exams or reminders about things I'd mentioned. "Good luck on your developmental psych test today. You've got this." Or, "Don't forget you wanted to check out that documentary I mentioned." The notes were innocent enough. But the fact that she was thinking about me, taking time to write these little messages, felt significant. I started looking forward to discovering them, treasures hidden throughout my day. Sometimes I'd find one tucked into my backpack, or slipped into the pages of a book I was reading for leisure. Each one brought a smile to my face and a warmth to my chest. It was like she was reaching out to me in these small, private ways, building a connection that was just ours. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was rushing to get ready for an important presentation when I found a note tucked into my abnormal psychology textbook. Different from the others. The handwriting was the same, But the message made my heart stop. Meet me upstairs tonight after Chloe goes to sleep. We need to talk. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking slightly. This was it. Whatever had been building between us for months was finally coming to a head. The day dragged by impossibly slowly. I could barely concentrate during my presentation, my mind constantly wandering to that note and what Hailey might want to discuss. I stumbled over a few words, my professor raising an eyebrow, but I managed to pull through. On the way home, I replayed possible scenarios in my head. What if she wanted to tell me to back off? Or what if it was the opposite? When I finally made it home that evening, Hailey greeted me with her usual smile. But I could see something nervous in her eyes. "How did your presentation go?" she asked, and I managed to give her a coherent answer despite my racing thoughts. Chloe was unusually chatty during dinner, regaling us with drama from her sorority, completely unaware of the undercurrent of tension between her sister and me. I helped with dishes, hyper-aware of every time Hailey's hand brushed mine as we worked side by side. The soapy water sloshed in the sink, and I caught her glancing at me out of the corner of her eye. It was torture. This waiting game, but exhilarating too. When Chloe finally announced she was exhausted and heading to bed early, I thought my heart might beat right out of my chest. Hailey caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the stairs. I waited 20 minutes after hearing Chloe's bedroom door close, then quietly made my way upstairs to Hailey's room. The door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the hallway. I knocked softly, and Hailey's voice called for me to come in. She was sitting on her bed, still in her work clothes, but with her hair down, looking nervous and beautiful and absolutely terrifying in the best possible way. "Close the door," she said quietly. And I did, my hands trembling slightly on the knob. She patted the space beside her on the bed, and I sat down, careful to maintain some distance, even though every cell in my body wanted to be closer to her. "I've been thinking about this conversation for weeks," she began, her voice unsteady, "about whether I should say anything at all." She took a deep breath, gathering courage. And I found myself holding my breath. "The thing is, I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about whatever this is that's been happening between us." Her words confirmed everything I'd been hoping and fearing. "Hailey," I started, but she held up a hand. "Let me finish, please, before I lose my nerve." She turned to face me fully, her dark eyes intense and vulnerable. "I know this is complicated. You're Chloe's roommate. You live in our house, and I'm older than you. There are so many reasons why this could be a terrible idea." She paused, her gaze dropping to her hands. "But I've never felt this way about anyone before. The way you listen when I talk, the way you make me laugh. The way you care about your studies and your future. You're incredible, and I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between us, brave and beautiful and terrifying. This was the moment I'd been both hoping for and dreading, the crossroads that would determine everything that came next. "I've been waiting 3 months to tell you this," Hailey whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for mine in the dim light of her childhood bedroom. "Every time you smiled at me downstairs, every time you helped with dinner, every time you made my little sister laugh, I fell a little harder." I looked down at our joined hands, then back up into her eyes, seeing my own feelings reflected there. "Hailey," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I've been falling for you too." I tried to fight it, tried to convince myself it was just admiration or friendship, but I shook my head, finally allowing myself to be honest. "I think about you constantly. I look forward to our morning conversations more than anything else in my day. When you're not here, the house feels empty." Her face lit up with relief and joy, and suddenly, the space between us felt like too much. "So what do we do now?" she asked, her thumb tracing patterns on my hand. "We figure it out together," I said, finally brave enough to close the distance between us. "We take it slow. We're honest with each other, and we see where this goes." When she smiled, really smiled, it was like the sun coming up. "I'd like that," she said, "I'd like that very much." As she leaned closer, I realized that sometimes the best things in life are the ones that scare you the most. The chances you take when your heart overrules your head. This was our beginning, complicated and uncertain and absolutely worth it. In the days that followed, we navigated this new territory with care. We stole moments when Chloe wasn't around. A quick kiss in the kitchen before she woke up, whispered conversations late at night. I learned more about Hailey's life, her dreams of starting her own marketing agency, her love for hiking in the nearby mountains. We went on our first real date a week later, sneaking out to a small Italian restaurant downtown, where we talked for hours over pasta and wine. The complications didn't disappear, of course. We knew we'd have to tell Chloe eventually, But for now, we cherished the secrecy, the thrill of building something just for us. Hailey's touch became more confident, her smiles more knowing. And me, I felt alive in a way I never had before. Grateful for the unexpected turn my college life had taken. Looking back, that note was the spark, but the fire had been kindling from the moment I stepped through their door. Hailey wasn't just my roommate's sister anymore, she was the person who made me believe in taking risks for love. And as we moved forward, hand in hand, I knew we'd face whatever came next together. Some stories don't explode, they gather. In quiet kitchens over coffee. In penciled notes tucked between chapters. In the way someone listens like your words are a room worth living in. This one reminds us that love is not a lightning strike, it's a slow, steady current that asks one brave thing of us: tell the truth when it matters. The real turning point wasn't the kiss or the confession. It was the decision to honor what had been growing in the silence. To risk awkwardness, risk timing. Risk losing a comfortable routine. For the chance to build something honest. That's the lesson. If your heart keeps returning to the same doorway, at some point you have to knock. It doesn't mean recklessness, it means care with courage. Take it slow, name the feelings, hold the complications with both hands, and still choose what's real over what's easy. We talk a lot about timing, like it's fate, but timing is often just fear asking for one more week. When the note appears, whatever your version of it is, read it, breathe, and step forward. If this story stirred something in you, tell me in the comments. What truth have you been carrying that deserves a voice? Was there a moment you chose courage over comfort? And what changed after? I read every reply. If you want more stories and reflections like this, about love, risk, and the small decisions that reshape a life, hit subscribe and tap the bell. Join a community that believes quiet bravery is still bravery. Your next chapter might already be waiting upstairs.